So for this guided meditation, I'm going to offer just a little bit of guidance. So inviting you to notice your body. Allow your spine to elongate without effort, just with a sense of awareness, curiosity, brightness. So it's not a stress or a strain or a goal to straighten your back, but to allow your spine to fill with awareness and notice as you do that if there's a little bit more space between each vertebrae. And as we elongate, you can notice that the chin may tuck in just a fraction, and it allows the elongation to extend throughout the neck. And then see if it's possible to locate your hips and notice if they're just slightly in front of your sitting bones. And sometimes what can be helpful is a very gentle rocking back and forth on your sitting bones to feel where your hips are and where your sitting bones are, and just to notice this gentle rocking. And without having to close the rocking, shut it down, it just might become more and more subtle, so that there's just the tiniest rocking with the in-breath and the out-breath. And mostly your hips are just slightly in front of your sitting bones. And that allows the small of your back to support the muscles in the middle and upper part of your back, so that you can relax as much as possible and sink into the chair or the cushion. So whenever possible, we'd like to optimize the posture to support openness, uprightness, ease, relaxation, and groundedness. Feeling our weight. Notice the space you occupy. Notice the shape you occupy. Notice the density. Do you feel heavy or do you feel light? And without any judgment or even needing to have an opinion, just notice what you notice in an open, loving, non-judgmental awareness. Within the body, sitting here in the space with this group of people together, we are breathing. Each of us is breathing. And so if it's available to you to shift your focus to the breath, I invite you to do that. Receiving the fullness of the in-breath and relaxing, releasing in the fullness of the out-breath. Letting the in-breath stretch, energize, and uplift the spine and the neck and the shoulders and the back. Letting the out-breath relax, release, and support letting go, collecting attention, being fully present. So we start with where we're at, receiving the breath, releasing the breath. Gathering and sustaining attention on the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. It's really helpful to spend as much time as we need with our body, to invite it to be soft and supple, relaxed, upright, grounded, and present. That awareness suffuses the whole body, that breath suffuses the whole body, breathing in and breathing out. And while breath can remain an anchor, a touch point, a place to return to, we can allow attention to move to what is strong in awareness, whether it's body sensations, feelings of density or numbness. So we bring a collected attention to what is arising, noticing it, receiving it, allowing it. Sometimes it can be helpful to breathe through it. Breathe through numbness. Breathe with aliveness. When there's a lot of pain in the body, tightness, tension, sharp shooting pains, then a lot of compassion and discernment is needed. Yes, sometimes it is good to touch it and to breathe with it and through it. And sometimes it's really important to leave it and just be nourished and fed by the in-breath and the out-breath, the energy of the in-breath and the relaxation and release of the out-breath. To give us more capacity, to give us rest, to refresh and to renew. And then we may be in a position to return to unpleasant or painful sensations. And similarly, if there's grief, heartbreak, or fear present in your body, heart, and mind, or any other unpleasant mind state, it can be good to touch it with a tender, loving awareness, allowing it, recognizing it, breathing with it and through it, without any request or agenda to change it or have it go away. And just notice what happens. Does it get bigger? Does it get smaller? Does it change its shape? Does it stay the same? So we establish our attention, use our body to ground and to root us. Our breath can be an anchor, and work with what's present. Touch what's present, allow what's present, supporting our awareness with our breath and our loving, open, non-judgmental awareness that receives life just exactly as it is. And just with physical pain or physical unpleasant sensation, with heart, mind, plain or unpleasant sensation or experience, we need to be discerning about how much we stay with it, and when we compassionately and deliberately turn attention away and just stay with the nourishing in-breath, the relaxing out-breath, and rest, restore, renew. And sometimes you may notice that there's a natural shift of attention from the things that you're experiencing, the things that are happening, to the quality of awareness that is knowing and receiving experience. And if that is happening for you, if that's true for you, you don't need to pull your attention back to your body, to your breath, to your sensations. You can relax attention into awareness that knows itself, receiving experience into awareness, knowing it in awareness, and watching it recede and vanish in awareness. Sometimes there are no thoughts or feelings or sensations. There's just this spacious knowing. And this spacious knowing can be bright and luminous, sparkly. It can be golden. It can be black, a luminous darkness. It can be accompanied by a sense of fullness, contentment, delight, or absolutely nothingness. Again, we don't need to make experience be any one particular way. Our job is to be present with what is. Make choices that are wise and compassionate. When it's wise and compassionate to do so. And otherwise, just rest. Okay, we can have a stretch break for 10 minutes or so. Okay. So I just drop in, and so then there's this question of, well, what's helpful? What's useful, what's helpful? And so without having that kind of like mirroring mechanism of knowing details or specifics or where you are, I just allow what comes through me. And the first thing that comes through me is just very classical teachings. So it was for years and years and years in the monastery, often the teachings would start with the basic principle of sila, samadhi, and panya, of ethics, of concentration or collectedness, and then of wisdom. And so, we start this morning, one of the first things of speaking was of just recounting precepts, of putting ourselves in a frame of reference that allows us to stay connected and tethered to an ethical principle and guidelines that allow us to reflect on our actions of body, speech, and mind. And the Theravadan tradition, of which I'm the most familiar, uses this as really a ground. It's a kind of the foundation that helps establish the right ways of being and behaving, both towards ourselves and towards others, and in the way that we live in the world, so that there's really much more capacity to be able to do the more subtle work of focusing and concentrating and gathering attention, and then using that in the application of wisdom. So it's sweet to be here all together in early hours of the morning, and to have time and to have it, it's just coming out of the pandemic still, and still you're masked, and yet there's a gathering of people in a room, and so for years it hasn't been so easy to have a gathering of people in a room. And so we make an effort to come together and be in the space because it's helpful. There was efforts and emails and logistics and technical considerations of how do we make it so that this is a workable thing this morning, so that everybody here could benefit. And likewise, the effort of physically coming into a space, we need to actually bring our attention together in our body, heart, and mind. We need to gather it in. So ordinarily, we kind of operate like a centrifugal force where everything is spinning out. It's spinning out. We've got things that we need to do, and agendas that we need to fulfill, and actions that we need to figure out, and logistics and emails and shopping and schedules, and oftentimes the feeling can be of a movement from the internal experience of awareness and stillness and solitude to moving out into the world, to do and to get and to function and to organize. And so part of what we do in meditation is we gather it in. We gather in the thoughts, we gather in the actions, we gather in the activity, and we allow ourselves to orient around our attention is focused here. So our attention is focused here, and we start with very simple things, noticing the body, the weight of the body, the shape of the body, the density of the body, the contact of the body. And then move into more subtle experiences of the breath and the in-breath and the out-breath and relaxation and energizing. So we need to first gather our attention, collect our focus in order to even feel something as simple as our body sitting here. And then we sustain and apply that attention to be able to allow us to move into more subtle experiences of the breath and the body, and what it is to have a breath and a body, and how we can optimize our body posture and work with our breath in a way that just encourages a sense of well-being, fullness of energy and ease. So we don't want to force, we don't want pressure, We don't want to have this sense of like ramrod straight. Yet there's a value in having an uplift if that's available to us, in terms of just making it possible to sit with the least amount of muscle effort and most amount of flexibility and expansiveness, so that the breathing can happen unimpeded. So the sila happens on an ethical framework, and then there's the container of our body, the container of our breathing, as a way to gather in our attention. And so there's a way in which the ethics creates a philosophical through line, and the body creates a tangible through line for our attention to settle and gather. And when there's a sufficient amount of attention that's settled and gathered, then we can work it. We can open up and see what's here. What's going on? Is the body tight? Is it tense? Am I feeling anxious? It's a few days before I'm going to Costa Rica, and I have been unhoused for the last 5 months. And, I have my things here. So most of the things that I own are here. So I've got 5 tubs, and I had to figure out, what am I going to do with the 5 tubs? What's staying? What am I getting rid of? What's going with me? Is it all going with me to Costa Rica? Is it some of it going to the next place that I'll be house sitting? What's happening? And there's this incredible anxiety about all of this. Part of it is that I'm actually don't do being unhoused very easily. And part of it is that it's like, I don't know how to make choices about things that I don't have answers to. I don't know what I'm going to need where, you know. And so these last few days, just trying to figure out my stuff, there's just more tightness and tension and anxiety in my body. And so I just have to really focus on settling and staying with what it is that I do know, and what are the things that are clear, and to give space around the stuff that I don't know, and to figure out how I can make choices when I don't have all the answers, and what's the next ticket that I need to buy. And as I apply myself to each of the things that are available to me, then I settle a little bit. But I'm here and I'm house sitting, and Yuki, who you've noticed because he's like king of the castle, walks right in front of the computer. Yeah, he is here to help. And so, he grabs me, and he purrs me, and he sits on my lap, and he just melts. And it's like, okay, it's not only you to figure out what it is to relax and melt. There's these benevolent beings that show up in human form, in animal form, in tree form, and garden form, that help remind us of what it is to be at ease and open and settled, and that we're not on our own having to figure it all out. So that's me in my own little world, but we're in a bigger world, and the bigger world has all kinds of things that are going on in terms of weather events and wars and legislation that is terrifying, and animals that are struggling, and people that are struggling. And I mean, there's a lot that's happening in this world. So we have our micro orbit of our personal experience and our family and our community, and that's taking place in a larger picture. And the larger picture right now is complicated, and there's a lot of things going on that are heartbreaking. And that is the truth. So last week, my friends nearby told me about Duke Gardens, so I went there. And the cherry trees are exploding, and the tulips are glorious, and the bees are out and buzzing, and there's little bees and big bees and black bumblebees, and it's just like this. And there were people there who were there just after their wedding ceremony, taking wedding pictures, and there was children, and there were all kinds of different people from all kinds of different cultures and all kinds of different languages. And everyone was feeling uplifted by the spectacular display of bloom and flowers and color and aliveness of spring. And that is also true. So where I am, which is in the countryside outside of Raleigh-Durham in North Carolina, when I arrived here, nothing was blooming. It was just like looked like this barren landscape. There were some things that were still green because they're evergreen, but there was not a single blossom. And I've been here just shy of a month, and it just has exploded with things coming out of the ground and hyacinths, and I don't even know the names of everything. Cherry blossoms, all kinds of things. And so this barren landscape has begun to populate initially quite quietly, and then it kind of like builds momentum. It kind of gets this energy behind it where every day is a new blossom, a new color, a new blooming. Something is coming into flower, something's coming into leaf. And these things are happening simultaneously. We've got my own micro-orbit world of unsettledness, of how do I manage moving from here to there, and the feelings of like, but I don't have a home base, and where am I going to land? Then we've got the larger orbits of people who we know who are really struggling. Then we've got our global orbits that is going through such an enormous amount of challenge and destabilization, and all of these things. For those of us here in North America right now, in this part of the world, spring is exploding. So, for me, what's really helpful is to be present with my body as fully as I can, to support myself to be present and to ground and to relax. It continually surprises me how much habit I have in not being physically present in my body and relaxed. It's like I have a habit of not doing that. So it takes deliberate attention to reverse that habit and to feel my body and to deliberately invite relaxation and to create conditions that support relaxation. So yes, it's true that, right before I have to shift and when I'm packing, it's anxiety producing. But Yuki is here like a 15-pound purr bomb, and he's devoted to tackling me and reminding me that's not the whole story, you know? And he's fierce in his he'll grab me. Like I walk past him and he'll just grab me and he'll say, "No, right now, your job is to pay attention to me. That's your job." So there's joy, and it comes and it goes. And then there's anxiety, and it comes and it goes. And there are these bigger things that are happening. And it's like, how do we navigate all of it? So if we come back to the initial teachings of Sila Samadhi Panya, we start with the through line of our ethical foundation. Are we living with integrity ourselves? Can we trust that our actions are not deliberately causing harm to ourselves or to others? And when we can say yes to that, then we can relax. Even if we don't know the whole picture and we don't know the answers to everything, that can give us some confidence that what we are doing is not causing harm. And then we bring our attention to our body. And we notice, what's the posture right now? And is there a way to invite 2% more relaxation. You don't need to change your posture, but just where you are just now, is it possible just to soften a little bit more, relax a little bit more, open a little bit more? And as you do that, does that support you gathering attention to then open up and feel and notice what else is here? I've done some deep personal work in the last few years and also recently, and occasionally there's things that open up and it's just searingly painful. And I was just in one of those just recently. Just searingly painful. It was so painful, it took every single ounce of energy that I had to just manage being present, not checking out. And sometimes it's just like that, you know? And so when that's the case, it's really helpful to go walking in nature and to lean up against trees and to look at the blooms and to listen to the bees and to spend an extra amount of time with 15-pound fir balms, you know, that just will cuddle you and snuggle you and purr you and just like will vibrate you into remembering that there's something else that's also happening in this picture. And as is the case, nothing lasts. And so when I bring my attention to that which is searingly painful, it shifts. And then again, I can feel the fullness of the joy and immerse myself in the glory of the spring and allow myself to just to feel the change of the weather from cold to warm to hot to cool to rainy to and back into warm again and sunny. So we have this changing experience. That's what's going on. And yet, as we are able to feel the focus of our attention, and rather than absorb into the content of what we're experiencing, begin to realize that one of the through lines that connects all of our experience is the awareness that knows and receives experience. It's not the specific sensation in my fingers or in my toes or in my legs that stays the same. It's the awareness that knows the sensation in my fingers and my toes and my legs. And that awareness not only can receive the sensations of my body and my hearing and my smell and my taste, it not only receives thoughts, but it also is this vast, spacious place to relax into. So there's a joy that can come when we stop trying to shift what's happening in the physical world of content and relax more into receiving and knowing awareness of it. Because what happens is that it's not so much me trying to do or to get rid of, but it's a shift from me being here doing something out there to just being present, being awake, feeling, noticing. So there's different kinds of joy that we can experience. There's the joy of just recognizing that, I'm not causing any harm. So that's the joy of an absence of regret. Then there's the joy of recognizing when we do intentionally kind and generous things. Then there's the joy of our mind being able to settle and collect. I mean, do we realize that how few people on the world are able to actually spend 4.5 hours of time to do this? Like, what a privilege this is. Not only that we can find the time, but that our minds and our bodies are actually able to do this. I was just on a call yesterday night with my students who've just graduated from the mindfulness meditation teacher certificate program. And we were having a little reunion and talking about setting up a retreat together. And one of them said, I want to talk because I've been invited to give a mindfulness talk to 200 people, and I don't know what I should do. And she said, I gave a talk to another group of people, and I was teaching mindfulness for 10 minutes, and everyone was so anxious they could hardly stand it. 10 minutes. They couldn't stand it. And that's actually much more common than not, that people are so used to being busy and doing things and filling their minds up with activity and moving from one sort of stimulus to another sort of stimulus, that even to sit still for 10 minutes is anxiety producing. So we can feel the joy of what it's like to have time where we can do this, and the capacity to actually stay with the practice. That's awesome. And it doesn't mean that our minds are super quiet or still, or that we don't have stuff that's going on. It doesn't mean that. But it means that there's enough positive conditions and wholesome factors that we can stay with what's going on. And then as we work it in the right way, where we use our breath to touch what's there and relax it, and then turn away from what's there and renew and resource and regenerate. It gives us some capacity, resiliency to meet things which can be increasingly challenging. So I was humbled last week when I was meeting that pain. It was just on the edge of what I was capable of managing. It was like part of me absolutely did not want to feel that stuff. No way. But the practice has given me the knowing that the more I'm able to meet it wisely, not push through it, but meet it wisely, then the more it can release. And when it releases out of presence rather than disappears from suppression, there's a whole other kind of joy in your system. It's like, okay, there's another thing that I've been through. It's like, I have confidence I can meet what's there, even when it's really big, when it's really intense, when it's really painful. So there's the joy of confidence that the practice will support me even when things are not easy. And then there's the joy of being able to stay present in the middle of beauty, So you can walk through the garden. I walked through the garden and just soaked it all in. The colors and the fragrance and the joy of everyone around me, and just could stay focused through the times of pleasure. That's another feature of collectedness. And then the joy of recognizing that who I really am isn't what I think and feel, isn't the sensations in my body, the shape of my body, the health of my body. Those are things that I experience, but that doesn't actually carve out my identity. That I can locate myself in this field of awareness. And sometimes it just feels like it's neutral, and sometimes it feels like it's luminous, and sometimes it feels profoundly loving, and sometimes it feels black, luminous black, or nothing. But it's vast and it's timeless. And those things are not connected, or that's not quite the right word. It's not that they're not connected. What's going on in the particulars of my own little world, what's going on in the immediacy of my family and in my communities, what's going on in the global world, do not erase awareness in all of its different shapes and manifestations. So I can feel heartbreak about some of the things that are happening in this world. Like it feels like it's happening to me, to my body. And I can grieve or just feel fiercely protective. And I can open the mind and feel this spaciousness. And both are true. So springtime in the Anthropocene is really just that, where we're not closing our eyes to what's going on. In the small, immediate, proximate, in the medium, and in the large. It's not a shutting down, it's not a shutting out, it's not a disavowal or a denial, it's not superimposing transcendent truths to erase the heartbreak of what we're navigating in our world. It's not that. It's a step-by-step meeting what is, working with what's available, establishing a ground in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds, in our capacity to be present, and working with what's arising with as much wisdom and compassion as we can for wherever we're at. So it's an incredible blessing that a group of people come together to practice, share the Dharma, share the teachings, share space, help support each other. Because I don't think that what we're in right now, any of us are able to navigate alone. It's way too big and way too complicated. And Kitty understands that. With a kind of tenacity to view that is rather remarkable. So I will pause here and invite your comments, your impact, your questions. Open this up for discussion.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so very much for dropping in on us. I always consider myself kind of a walk-in from another planet, but wherever you come from, I'm glad that you're here and sharing with us. My favorite poem, and that's probably not the most wise thing to say, but The Guest House by Rumi. And I think that sums up, I heard you when you were sharing, I just thought that thread ran through me like, welcome it all. Welcome it all, whatever comes in, the depression, the joy, because we don't know where it came from, but it's coming for our benefit. Just like Kitty's there for you. Um, so I'm just grateful because I love it when people can share how they use the Dharma in their life, and I just feel that, you hit all the right points. It's just like, yeah, whether we're here or there, it's there always for us, and these little, I think that, we want to clean out the basement. We want to really, get rid of a lot of stuff, and it's going to involve pain. And I think, when that happens, I know that I'm clearing something out, and I know I'm going to be okay. And I have a friend who got a cancer diagnosis a couple of months ago, and we have been friends for 30 years. We have meditated together, and her ego just has her totally in its grips, totally, so it's like, we do need each other. We need support. I know she'll get through it. I know she's going to, flip the switch and get out of the ego and into the space, that we all need. So I'm not going to say anymore except thank you. Come back whenever. I mean, this is wonderful. Have a wonderful Costa Rica. I know you will. I have no doubt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you. Does anyone else have comments or questions or things you want to share?
Yeah, I'm John, and I feel like everyone can kind of relate to that kind of feeling of uh, I guess what's the word? Feeling it's sort of that a little bit of the fear of the unknown when the change is happening in your life, like you're moving or you're leaving a place or something like that, and I've experienced myself. So I know very well, like kind of, been sort of flooded out of places and, just different situations where I had to move suddenly. And it's like sort of like a little bit of feeling of like, you want to have a feeling of security, like you have a home. And I think that's really speaks a lot of truth to the teaching that you've offered about, like the springtime and rebirth. And it's sort of a chance, like, the Dhamma speaks to, the truth of rebirth, and then in a way, springtime is sort of another one of those rebirths, and like, change, and with respect to impermanence, change and kind of that feeling, just I guess the faith in the truth of rebirth, as far as like, you know that a change is happening, something is going away, a shelter that you have, or a secure spot, a secure place that makes you feel secure is leaving. But you know that like another space is coming along the way. It's sort of like a wave or something, you know, like you're in the crest or the trough, but you know that the next crest is coming up. Yeah, so I can relate to that. I've experienced it a few times. And, I felt like the teaching was a beautiful, like, kind of metaphor for that. And we appreciate you and thank you so much. It was good to meet you. I'm glad Josh kind of relayed everything. He wasn't able to be here today, but so thank you.
Yes, John, when you say that, what happens for you? What do you notice when you share those things?
It's a good feeling because you know you said that you were talking about experience and you know there's certain moments, you know, I mean I go through my week and I'm often distracted and you know kind of caught in the realm of you know samsara and delusion like everyone else, but then there's those moments of clarity where the truth of something kind of bubbles to the surface, like in doing this practice, like for example with you all this morning, allows those moments of truth and that realization and that awareness to come forth and to be able to share this with a group of people, you know, a group of folks in the Sangha that are you know, also, you know, it's just it's a good feeling. It's sort of like a feeling of release that you've sort of, you know, had an insight, I suppose, or and just being able to share those good feelings towards another person, that you can relate that experience that you've had to experience someone has some trepidation or something, and you have sort of a point of reference that is common. And it's just a good feeling to be able to talk and relate to two instances and feel comforted, you know, and maybe know that others are comforted because you had a similar experience or something.
That's right. So even though you don't know me very much in terms of, you know, much of my personal characteristics or my history or whatever, you know, we can drop into these fields, and from the perspective of Dhamma, there can be quite a lot of sharing. And in that sharing, there's resonances and dissonances, but in the resonances, there's much less sense of separation. And so there's a sense of, well, we have something that we share. And so, you know, we don't have a lot of personality history, you know, in terms of details or time or, you know, having met you before. But when we come into that space where there's a resonance about shared experiences or shared understanding of reality, then the defense mechanisms of needing to protect or defend or to be separate or to claim space or to claim territory, that all falls away. And then what's left is what you're describing, is this open kind of feeling of like it's just a good feeling to know that we can connect like that, and that what you can say is affirming of what I shared, that it makes sense to you, that there's there's a way of connecting like that. And I feel it, you know. So I'm grateful also for what you shared. Thank you, John. And thank you for the technological supports that makes it possible for you to sit in a room, however many feet away from a computer, and for me to be able to hear you perfectly fine. Yay, Yeti. Or whatever kind of a microphone that is.
And Donica helped with that as well. That's her laptop that's kind of the altar view. So,
And that's so lovely to have an altar shrine, you know, that everybody can just see the shrine. Really lovely. Thank you for that. Are there other comments or things to share? Things that come up? Yes, please.
I have a request and I guess a comment or an observation. The I guess version and the precepts you read, I thought was just so beautiful, and I don't know if it's possible for you to send us a copy of that. I just loved it.
It's on the Awakening Truth website. And so, and then on the first iteration of schedule, I sent you a hyperlink for it. So you already have it. And it's
Okay.
it's an amalgamation of the Thich Nhat Hanh precepts, the Manzanita precepts, the classical Theravadan 5 precepts, the precepts that they used for the MMTCP program, and the Awakening Truth group was the one that came up with that version. And I'm proud of it.
Wow.
I'm very proud of it. It feels like it does all the good things and none of the bad things, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, quite beautiful. I guess the other thing I've been struck with from your talk today is that I appreciate and still trying to grow in myself is this capacity to hold all things. And it listening to you helped me realize changes in my own life through this practice that I don't think I would have seen. So for example, there was a time where I would have used words from your talk like gratitude and balance. And it's not that those words are wrong, but I can just feel the changes that have transpired in me in terms of how I hold those words in a bigger context such that it feels so much fuller, if you will. And there's a kind of a sweet sadness with that that I don't totally understand, nor I guess do I need to understand. I can feel it now saying the words.
Well, if you will
I
allow
think
me to ask you a question, and you're certainly welcome to say no, but if together we just touch that sweet sadness, what happens?
there's a kind of thinking into it. There's a very complicated and beautiful. And even a little exciting. Some strange word.
What happens if instead of trying to explain it, more energy is just with being present with it, just receiving it and being with it and noticing where it is and how it is impacting you?
Well, it's too much, no, too much words. I can feel like my strong.
And when you bring attention there, does it get stronger? Does it stay the same? Does it diminish? Does it change shape?
So, don't know how to explain what
Yeah,
I'm feeling.
it's okay. There's no need to try to explain it. But sometimes what can happen when there's a shared focus, like an effort to meet with somebody, with a process, that it can open or shift or move, or more information about it can reveal. And in that way, then the meditation is less about you being with it on your own, and it's more about being met together, meeting something together in a whole field of awareness. Yeah. Thank you. Are you
Thank you.
are you feeling complete now to pause?
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Let me just see if I've got it so that I'm only seeing if anyone else would like to speak. Hi, Laura.
I just wanted to say thank you, Amma. Hello. I've been off video moving around my house. I have two little ones, so I think it's probably better that way. But I just wanted to say thank you, and that I really enjoyed spending time with the group and with you this morning. I did want to bring up something, if we have time. Um, I've been really thinking a lot the past couple months about mindfulness of the body, and that was something that you touched on today. Um, I've noticed that when I practice meditation, that in dealing with any anxiety and that kind of thing, there's obviously a tension that goes along in the body with that. And I'm able to relax somewhat, whether it be in my sitting meditation or throughout the day. But underneath, there's kind of this like chronic, for lack of a better word, tension in the body that doesn't seem to relax in certain places. And so I was just curious if you've thought of that or experienced it, if you had practices outside of meditation that you do to kind of maybe address that, or do you just recommend more of a presence acceptance kind of standpoint on that?
So thank you, Laura, for your question. And your question taps into something that I'm actually quite passionate about. So, my personal story is that I've been meditating since 1979. and for many of those years was in a very traditional classical monastic context that has a lot of depth and and tremendous potential, and yet there were things that I was never able to resolve with the meditation instructions or within that context. So after 20 years of classical meditation and only staying with the Theravadan, I started to look at what else could I use that will help me to deal with some of the stuff that's not releasing with the classical practices that I'm doing. And so I have spent the last 20 years doing all kinds of stuff, different kinds of therapy and different kinds of dream work and different kinds of somatic work and different kinds of trauma work. And what I understand now is that there's this whole span, and the span includes stuff that includes trauma. It includes our attachment formation of what happens when we didn't get what we needed when we were children, in terms of the way that it's set up structures that then feel like they're hardwired in terms of the way we experience ourselves and how we view the world. They're not hardwired, it's just that it looks that way. Then the whole range of where classical meditation actually is useful. And then on the other side of classical meditation and some of the other healing modalities that work with light and energy and other things to help shift some of this stuff. So chronic tension is there for a reason. It's not there for no reason. And how much you're wanting to understand what that reason is about is really a personal choice. And it's also, what do you have capacity for? But, for me, one of the things that has been really important, because I come with the blessings of having all of it, having all the different kinds of traumas that you can have, having attachment wounding that has been really quite fundamental in terms of some of the stuff and the way that my body has been operating, as well as the core views that I have about myself and the way that I see the world. And when I have been able to do more of the attachment repair work, then that has created the context where some of these, like what felt like immovable physical stuff, is starting to shift. So it doesn't mean because you've got tension that you've got attachment wounding. It's not nearly as simple as that. But it also isn't the opposite the true, that if you've got some of these other things, trauma or attachment wounding, that there's not going to be any impact on your body. It doesn't work that way. So then the question is that when you notice what's happening, is that what is your intuition about what else might be supportive for you? And where can you get some tools that will help you explore if that's an opening or worthwhile way to move or not? And part of the reason why I'm passionate about this is because I come from a tradition that very strongly, for decades, really was oriented around all you needed to do was meditate more. And I have a very strong experience that actually is not the case. That there's many things that don't need more meditation. They need very specific kinds of support to help leverage them and open them and release them, so that then the classical meditation can do what it's optimally designed to do. And it isn't that everybody just needs to meditate more. It doesn't dismiss the power and the value of meditation, but some of this stuff is actually nuanced and complex and layered, and it needs tools that are designed to touch it, to work with it, to leverage it, and to do it in a way that optimizes health and well-being rather than solidifies a sense of either a sense of insufficiency or a sense that something's wrong with you or that you're not meditating correctly. So when I say these things, what happens for you, Laura?
Yeah, that really resonates. I feel like you just hit the nail on the head with kind of how I've been feeling these past few months. Um, so yeah, I guess I feel like, I don't want to say I hit a wall. That's probably not the best term, but I feel like I'm going to only do so much right now with my meditation. And I've kind of had an insight, so to speak, of like being able to release just a little bit of tension that I can really does open up my mind. But I feel like I should keep going with that. But you know, um, I think it's going to be a very long, lifelong practice to do that. Um, and because it seems like, there's been like an accumulation over time.
So I would say yes and maybe not, in the sense that, some of these things, like just let's look at attachment formation, for example. Attachment formation, the kinds of ways that you were cared for and the ways in which you were impacted by that is incredibly resilient. Like it's incredibly resilient. Like there's like a 75% chance that the attachment formation that your great grandmother had is the same one that you have. And there's like a 75%
Mm-hmm.
chance that the attachment formation that you had when you were 6 months old is the one that you're going to die with. It's really resilient. But just because it's resilient like that doesn't mean that if you get the fulcrum and the leverage in the right place, it can actually shift and it doesn't take forever. And that's mind blowing. So one of the things that I feel really excited about is I have done some attachment work and I'm wanting to roll out an attachment repair process that's a meditative based community practice. And we're just in the process of talking about doing that. And with me and with colleagues that I know, it takes between 1.5 and 3 years to go from the attachment formation that you have to into mostly being securely attached. And that's mind-boggling. That something that is that resilient can shift in that kind of time framework, and it does. So it,
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, it's wise to say, yeah, it's probably going to be a lifetime practice. But on another hand, if you start focusing in on where the tension is and what is likely to be like the root or the kingpin of it, and you find methodology that is designed for that, it can actually shift remarkably quickly. Not that the whole thing is resolved, not like that, but that it's amazing that what feels like it's concrete and it's there and it's hardwired and it's going to take 100 years, it doesn't necessarily have to.
Mm-hmm. That's really encouraging, because I do think that it's like a passed down. Trauma is such a strong word, but it kind of is the best definition for some of these things. And it's like a generational thing. So it feels like, oh, well, that would take so long to repair. But that's very encouraging that you've had that experience and that you've been able to identify that.
So there's 3 blog posts that I wrote a few months ago. One is called Confessions of an Avid Meditator. The other is called Attachment Repair for Meditators Part 1 and Attachment Repair for Meditators Part 2. They're on the Awakening Truth blog post. And they talk about all of this in very specific details.
Oh, well, that's great. I'm glad I asked my question.
So it's a
I will
courageous
take a
question.
look. Definitely.
It's a courageous question to ask, particularly in communities that tend to be focused around all you need to do is meditate. And that's one of the characteristics of most meditation communities is that it's good because it works and that all you need to do is to do that. And so it takes courage even to voice that question, because that question then actually makes it a question about the whole assumption if meditation is all you need.
Well, it's just something that popped up for me, so I'm glad to talk
So,
to you about it. Thank
and
you.
so having said this, what is your impact? What are you left with?
Sorry, I Zoom kind of messed up for a minute,
I said,
but I feel very
having,
encouraged, and I'm looking forward to reading more.
okay, good, great. Thank you, Laura.
Did you get what I said?
I said you were very encouraged and you're looking forward to reading more. Yeah. I'm in a Wi-Fi weird zone, and so it's the whole neighborhood. So sometimes if I take my
I think
video
it
off,
might be my end.
might be yours. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Anybody else want to share? We've got a couple more minutes left.
I'm very intrigued by what you said, and I'm really, really glad Laura asked that question. And but what the problem for me is exact meaning of word attachment in this context. English is not my first language, so I'm afraid I'm not totally clear on that.
Tell me what your first language is, if you don't mind.
Separation,
Okay.
Eastern, yeah.
Okay, so in the Buddhist tradition, attachment is a bad thing. Attachment is the thing that we want to get rid of. Attachment is the thing that causes suffering. Attachment is our attachment to greed and to hatred and to delusion, and all of it is bad. There's no attachment in the Buddhist tradition that's a good thing that you want to cultivate. It's all considered something that's unwholesome, and it's part of what keeps us suffering, and all of it is the thing that we want to reduce or eliminate or create the conditions so it doesn't arise. This attachment is a psychological attachment. It's the attachment that a baby has to their primary caregivers. And it's the attachment that sees that the baby has what they need, that provides the support and the safety that they need, that affirms them, that celebrates them, that delights in them, that encourages them to explore. This attachment is crucial for health and well-being. It's not optional, it's crucial. And the attachment repair is needed when there isn't the right kind of those basic ingredients. When a child is a baby and they don't have the right kind of support, then the attachment formation is not healthy, and that it shows up, and that's the resilient attachment formation that I was talking about that can need repair. So this kind of attachment has a different meaning. It's the same word, but it has a very different meaning. And this kind of attachment we want. We want to have this kind of attachment because this kind of attachment sets us up to feel healthy and safe and trusting, to be able to trust other people, to be able to use the meditation for what it was designed for, to be able to enter into states of emptiness or non-conceptual experiences, and to not panic in the ways that we would panic when our attachment formation is ruptured or injured, because it brings us back into this primary experience of like abandonment. Sorry. And so when we have attachment wounding, one of the things that I talk about in those blog posts is that the basic experience of emptiness triggers a trauma response that then you have to move away from, because you cannot tolerate the experience of being triggered that way. So when we talk about attachment in the Buddhist perspective and we talk about attachment in the psychological perspective, we're talking about completely different things. But it's really important that we understand the different ways each of these things are being used, because they have their own intelligence. We need healthy attachment in this context, and we need to release attachment in that context. Did that explain for you? Did that make it clear?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Very good.
And so when you hear me say that, what happens for you?
Something in me sets into the right place.
It settles into the right place. Awesome. That makes me
Yes.
feel glad to hear that. Okay, so let's shift gears and now just contemplate the goodness of this day, the blessings of having space and time and the ability to gather together, and everyone's effort to show up and to be present and to practice, to listen to precepts and to chant and to hear the Dharma, to discuss things together. And the fact that we have a frame of reference, that it's possible to suffer less and to be free. These things are an extraordinary blessing. So we take the goodness of our efforts in whichever way we have access to them, and we just share them with our loved ones, with all the Sangha members that are not able to be here with us today, with our communities, with our colleagues, with our neighbors. We share them far and wide so that it spreads out and eventually becomes part of the blessing field of the world, that all of life and all of minerals and water and air receive the blessings of our efforts today, are imprinted with the goodness of what we've talked about today. And if there are individuals that you want to bring this to, please do. If there are people who are struggling, you can either think of them quietly or say their names aloud. If there are communities that you know that are in hardship, we can share the blessings of our efforts today with them. Lift them up in the light, hold them in safety and in tenderness and care, that they might have everything that they need. Now, I sent you a newsletter, and it has a couple of things in it, including tomorrow night I'm giving a slideshow on my trip to India, if that's of interest. And there's a couple of day-long retreats in April that are more an exploration of the theme on attachment repair and meditation, if that interests you. And it also has a donation button. And I didn't cut and paste the donation button into my notes this morning to put it in the chat box if there's an interest to make an offering for the teachings today. So are there any other announcements you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would just like to share, thank you very much. I think I encourage everybody to go on the Awakening Truth website. We'll probably share the donate link among our group as well. So, I appreciate the teaching. So thank you very much.
So here's the website, awakeningtruth.org. So, and thank you again. So I'm grateful for our time and your presence and your sincerity, and I hope our paths meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye for now.